Go.
Sir Chris Nelson, British Chamber of Commerce Philippines Executive Director. Thank you for joining us all the way from Portugal. I hope you're always safe there. Now, I just like to ask, first of all, what is your reaction on the results of the Philippines economic growth for the second quarter?
Well, look, I think it's first of all, thank you very much for calling me. We always appreciate the time, Rex, and obviously giving our views to your viewers. So first of all, of course, we're very concerned. And obviously the contraction is sharper than what the economic team anticipated. And I think now they've revised down their anticipated contraction for the rest of the year. And obviously our concern has been obviously employment, because obviously this is a critical factor. And linked to that is the fact that 90% of all companies in the Philippines is either MSMEs or SMEs. And if you take our chamber, 50% of our members are SMEs or MSMEs. So what we really want to see is how can we support our members to go through obviously this very difficult phase and also help the overall economy, and in particular the unemployment, which is obviously a very critical factor.
So for now, what is the general sentiment among your member companies? What is the feeling that's surrounding all of this?
I think there's a mixed feeling, to be very honest. Obviously, it depends, of course, the sector you're in. Don't forget, we have very large corporates. We have companies who are involved in essential businesses, whether it's banking, whether it's food manufacturing, whether, of course, it's in utilities. We also have PLDT, we have Globe, we have others, all right? It really depends, obviously, the sector you sit in. But, of course, there's an overall view. First of all, what is our overall strategy and plan? i.e., we fully understand the health challenges, the considerations that need to be taken. At the same time, how can we work together, living with the virus, and we just had a very good webinar with Secretary Lopez, who made that point that the virus is here. Of course, we all want to get the vaccine, but until that happens, we have to live and work with it, and at the same time, continue to balance both the health considerations and the economy. So I think the overall consideration of our members, Rex, is obviously how can they plan their business? What can they do to go forward? What support can they anticipate the government will be doing to the economy? And then on a more, what I would say, the area that we're working on in terms of trade and investment with the country is what overall signals can the country be giving in terms of future business and future investors. So I kind of put it into three categories, if I may. One is what is going to be the planning overall, what is the support, which is very critical, and further, what is the measures that the Philippines is going to be taking, which gives further signals for foreign direct investment.
With regards to the plan, for now, do you have any initial idea on how does this plan will look like? Are you considering, for example, some of your member companies to settle for work from home setup, or yeah?
Well, I think first of all, a number of our members already have work from home. But obviously that has to be balanced. There are some businesses that you have to be working either in a manufacturing or some essential from the office. So it's a question of how you balance it. I think in terms of our members, what is very important is to see how the government will now take the next steps. And to be fair to the government, I mean, these are unprecedented challenges. And obviously, it's very difficult for any government, whether it's the Philippines, whether it's the United Kingdom, across the world. But going forward, I mean, let's talk about, I think now, obviously, this 2 weeks of MECQ is to, as been stated, to reset, to give rest to obviously the medical professional staff to reset the strategy. And yesterday I was involved in a webinar with Vince Dizon, who's the head of BCDA, and he's also obviously now been appointed to head up the tracking and tracing aspect. So clearly, based on those discussions, there's going to be a much more focus on supporting, I believe, LGUs. How can you do much more specific focus work and therefore not have overall generalized lockdowns or move back in quarantine? So I think, first of all, our members are working closely, and we obviously have a very close working relationship with the Department of Trade and Investment, taking what we do. Secondly, saying that and obviously work from home and balancing it is one aspect, but also giving our members how they can plan out. Let's not forget, we have some members who are obviously in the particularly affected sectors. Example, they run restaurants or in the hospitality sector. We have one of our members who is very successful in the grooming and barber shop areas. I mean, these are ones that have just opened for a month and now they close again. Mm-hmm. So it's planning as well. But all those elements, and I think it's working with the government to see how we can progress to gradually reopening the economy, keep on reopening it, and at the same time, obviously, combating and working so that we're fully cognizant of the impact of the virus.
So since you've mentioned about government support, what kind of government support do you need in the position of BCCP?
Well, I think, first of all, BCCP is one member of an overall business community. So I think I would try to make that in two ways, Rex. The first is overall support. The Philippines, if you look at it, has just passed another part of the One Healing Together Act. But obviously, if you look at that, I think the amount of money involved is 160 billion. I may be out slightly, right? I mean, the figures do change, so apologies if I am. However, if I compare it to the Arise bill, which was the one being discussed in the previous Congress, and we've also had one of the co-authors, that's Congressman Lady Sharon Garin, working with us or on the webinar, that was for 1.3 trillion. So obviously there's a big difference, we understand, and obviously this also depends on resources. But if you look at obviously the Philippines within the context of Southeast Asia, at the moment in terms of quoted support, it's obviously smaller than other countries. So I think the first point I'd like to say is what can be the large macro overall stimulus. Now, yesterday, Vince Drizon talked about, of course, build, but that was obviously factored in as well before. It's just accelerating those projects. But I think, number one, we'd like to see a larger stimulus, which gives much more injection into the economy. Secondly, as part of that bill, I think we need to look at very specific sectors. As I've mentioned to you, support to MSMEs and SMEs is going to be critical. These are 90% of your companies, and they provide significant work. And I believe there has been some discussion about supporting them and obviously linking it to employee retention, because obviously unemployment is a critical factor for all companies. The final thing I'd like to say, actually, I'd like to see, or I think within the BCCP and the business community, support to those particularly affected sectors, obviously hospitality, travel, anything in those sectors. And again, we had, and I have to say, to be very fair, we've been running a lot of webinars, as everyone has been doing. But obviously, we've had a lot of interaction with government officials, and we appreciate their time, and it's been given willingly. And we also had the Secretary for Tourism, and she was very articulate, and of course talking about domestic tourism, and also talking about whether they could try and get some bubbles going on international. But obviously hotels is another key member of our chamber, and we want to see that because obviously they've been very badly affected. So if I can just summarize for your viewers, number one, I think we need to see a bigger macro approach. Number two, we'd like to see specific support, if possible, within that to MSMEs. And three, in particular, outlining for very particularly afflicted sectors.
I just go to more specific. So what kind of specific support for SMEs and the hospitality sector? Are you talking about interest-free loans, very low interest rates, or whatever package? What kind of support, particularly on those sectors?
Well, I think particularly so if I go through MSMEs, I think they do need interest-free loans. I think they need to have support specifically, if possible, in terms of what can they do in, I think, linking it to employee retention, which is one of the plans, because obviously unemployment is critical. Within the hospitality sector, I think you've got to break that down into what they need their support to the groups, particularly the airlines, particularly the travel sector. But can I link it to one other thing as well, Rex, because I think that's very critically important. The Philippines is a consumer-driven economy. It's done extremely well and it's had a very good performance. Let's not forget, the Philippines is approximately 110 million people. Consumer-driven economy needs to also have those consumers going out. If you look at the contraction, there's been a quite severe contraction in consumer spending. Obviously, people are not going out. So we also, linking to this, need to create reinsurances that people will go out, they will spend, they'll go to restaurants, they'll go to the malls when it can open up. And I say that because it's got to be a complete approach, right? We need to get to people so that the safety measures, that people feel reassured that they can go out. So again, in kind of a conclusion, I think for MSMEs, they need, yes, interest-free loans. They need support to keep their workforce. The hospitality sector, I would think, need direct support, particularly on airlines. And the third is getting a way of communicating so that, example, I think, is it McCarthy just announced, because we also do work with Project ARC, where they're going to be testing public drivers and so forth to give the public the reassurance that those drivers have been tested and obviously they are negative, and therefore give people that reassurance to go forward.
With regards to testing, how's the testing so far going on for British companies in the Philippines? Are you conducting mass testing? What kind of testing is it?
Well, again, I mean, it has to vary by companies. Don't forget, we have very large institutions and we have very small. So I think there's been a variety. I think companies have done, obviously, mass testing if they've got large manufacturing forces. They've obviously done rapid testing and obviously done health checks as well. I mean, let's not forget the temperature checks and everything else. So it really depends on the type of company you're in. But I believe that the work being done by Project, the idea of also reassuring people and trying to get people out there and focusing on areas, I think is the way forward.
Okay. How about Create Bill? Because this has yet to be passed in the Congress, right? So are you also pushing for its swift passage?
Look, I think Create will have a definite positive impact because it's going to reduce income tax from 30 to 25% on a corporate level. In terms of direct impact, what we probably want to see is the stimulus bill more significant initially. Why do I say that? I think the idea behind Create is very valid. Is to reduce the overall tax rate of the Philippines and put it more in line with other ASEAN countries. However, you've also, and I think it is a great support for that, I do believe, though, that you need very much a direct stimulus. So Create, I think, is a very good aim, but I would say it's in conjunction with further support, in particular, giving more direct and immediate stimulus. So yes, we support it, but we support it also in conjunction with the overall package.
A while ago, you mentioned about internal support, right? Providing support for SMEs and the hospitality sector, providing large amounts of stimulus. How about on the external side? What do you think the government should do in terms to attract more foreign investors, especially post-COVID period?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few areas. I mean, you've mentioned create. I mean, that's an overall aim which will also be communicated to companies. I think there's two other bills, and one in particular the British Chamber has been advocating for a long time, and that is the Retail Trade Liberalisation Act. We've been very much keen on that. We've been promoting it. We've been wishing for it to get passed. It did pass the lower house in the previous Congress. Again, it was mentioned by Secretary Lopez, so we think that will be a very key factor, and one that we can go back to interested parties in the UK. The other one is the Public Service Act, which we think will also create a lot more, reducing, excuse me, those sectors that are allocated to utilities, and therefore you can have much more foreign direct investment. And overall, I believe working and reducing the foreign negative investment list within the Constitution. This will then send the signal that the Philippines is much more open, and I believe your foreign direct investment will go higher. And those are the things we want to emphasize to people looking to do further business or new business in the Philippines.
Okay, I just like to ask, what is the sentiment among members? Are they planning to stay in the Philippines? Are they planning to reinvest into other countries, especially for your members?
For now, I think everybody is. We haven't had anybody say they're planning to reinvest into others countries. We have obviously members who are under significant pressure because of their business, particularly during the lockdown period. We haven't had anybody saying, and I've made that point before, saying they're looking to leave or close. I think, and in this respect, I think the next couple of weeks is quite important. I believe that obviously, and we fully understand the decision taken to move back to MECQ, but obviously from a business point of view, particularly for those who've just reopened, it's a significant issue, right? Because they have to close down again. So I think for members, excuse me, going forward, I would link it to the overall plans is how can we keep on gradually but progressively reopening the economy, making people feel reassured, because I think that will keep people there. And going forward, not having general lockdowns or moves back, but much more focused attempts, whether it's by a certain building or whether it's certain actions within a particular barangay, because this then allows companies to plan and see the way forward.
Okay, so can we also say that since the government is again to decide in a couple of days' time whether they will extend the modified enhanced community quarantine in Mega Manila, is it okay for you if they will extend the MECQ or the modified enhanced community quarantine, or is the sector can no longer afford such kind of lockdown?
No, I think, look, I think it's not just me saying that. I mean, Secretary Dominguez was also saying, yeah, I mean, many sectors of the economic team, I think what we would want, not what we would hope, as they have said, that this 15 days, I think it's 15 days, correct, is temporarily, that it will conclude on August 18th, that after that they have reset their health strategy, that they have given obviously sufficient time and rest, because obviously it was a request by the Medical Professional Association, and obviously we all support the frontliners. And going forward, and that was kind of discussed during the webinar with Vince who was on yesterday, to basically what support can they give to the LGUs to make it much more focused on specific areas. If you have a specific problem in one area or one location, that doesn't mean you have to then put the entire Metro Manila or outlying areas under one overall quarantine. So that's what we're hoping to see.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, is there anything that you would like to add, share with us, clarify?
Sure. Look, first of all, once again, thank you for the time to share our views. I would like to make, I think, a few points. The British Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, we always are very positive. We've been there many years. I think, obviously, it's an extremely difficult time for many companies and many businesses. We are very keen, as we always have been. We're working closely, supporting our members and the government. We do think, while this is a difficult time, there are also opportunities. We strongly urge, of course, the passage of those bills you mentioned, Rex, because that would also allow, I think, further investments to come in, and I think that's an important time. And we are also obviously conscious of the pressures in terms of the health side, but we believe, as Secretary Lopez, as has the different government officials that we work with, that we can work hand in hand, balancing health and the economy and continue to reopen up. And most importantly is to continue to provide employment and work and livelihood and actually growth. So yes, it's challenging times, but I'd just like to give the message that we still remain optimistic and we're still going to keep on working extremely hard to make it happen.
Okay, Mr. Chris Nelson, British Chamber of Commerce Philippines Executive Director, thank you very much, and I hope you're also safe there in Portugal.
We are indeed, and my thanks to you again, and I wish you and anybody who's watching this a very, very good weekend ahead and a very safe one, and we look forward to having further discussions and obviously seeing much more improvements and growth. So have a great time. Thank you very much for your time, Rex. I much appreciate it.